Well, hello and welcome to the Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick from Alpha Software. I'm pleased to be joined this week, as I am most weeks, by Dean McCormick, no relation, our lead solutions engineer here at Alpha Software. Today, Dean has got some exciting topics to go over, including the introduction of Alpha Anywhere version 4.1, though he may not get into too much of it this week since it's just been released. As well as some other things. So I know that you will like today's session. Two things you should know. First of all, this is a question-driven webinar, so please, by all means, type your questions into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel, and we will try to get to them during this session. Second thing is that today's session and all the other sessions of the Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A are recorded, and they can be found at videos.alphasoftware.com. So let's get started. Dean, I think you're on mute. Let me just take you off mute. Hello, Dean, are you there?
I would never want to interrupt you and take out, reduce your audio quality. I stay silent when I can. Excellent.
I'll go ahead and make you the presenter, and you should see a dialog box on your screen.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you everybody for joining us this week. Have a real fun, sort of laying the groundwork kind of Q&A webinar today. But as Dave mentioned, please take the time to go to the questions area of your GoToWebinar control panel. Enter your questions there. Dave will be monitoring them, lining them up, and we'd love to try and answer as many of those as possible. Want to say thank you again for people who have been emailing in questions. We're getting more and more of those, which we love because we're able to then feed that into our planning for these webinars. And a bit about today, I have a real quick presentation about what we're going to talk about next week, which is the version 4.1 release. We're going to go into a little detail on that to let you know what's in there. And then I want to start by talking a little bit about mobile optimized forms today and why did Alpha develop these things. So it's a little bit of a backgrounder day to day, but we'll keep it so we leave lots of times for your Q&A. So get those questions in there. Again, my name is Dean McCormick, working here with Dave. And first, I would like to make a couple quick announcements. As we talked about last week, we have the Alpha DevCon 2016. It's now available for registration. Going to be a phenomenal event. If you go to alphasoftware.com, DevCon 2016. This goes over what the event will be about, the speakers, the training, the contest, and your ability to register at very aggressive pricing. It's really, really good stuff, and we have some phenomenal things there. For people who are interested, also we've now published our training agenda for pre-conference training. It will be on September 20th, the day before, and I highly recommend, if you're going to take the time to go up there, to attend this, especially because we are going to be able to focus and help bring you up to speed on mobile optimized forms. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in detail today. But you're going to see here we have a little intro video. You can register it right here. You've got a couple ugly pictures here, so don't, maybe skim by that really quick, or go, just stay up here in the top. That way you don't get scared away from the training. But we have a great team that's going to do this training. And I do like to mention that even though we have myself and Chris Martin, who you're going to hear more and more about, just a phenomenal developer. He's helping us mentor. He's doing everything, really. He's keeping us out of trouble. But we have a whole team set up to help with this training. Dave will be there. We have a couple other people. So it's going to be a very hands-on event, meaning that you're going to sit down and you're going to code up and build mobile optimized forms. So when you walk away after this training, you are going to be extremely prepared, and you are just going to be able to knock it out of the park. And so I highly recommend, if you are attending the DevCon 2016, which I recommend, you attend the training. You're really going to get a huge amount out of it, and you're going to walk away with actionable knowledge and capability that I think you're just going to really enjoy it there. So go there, check that out on there. Next, I'd like to dive in and talk about Alpha Anywhere v4.1. And what's interesting is Alpha Anywhere is actually v12, the version 12 of the Alpha software development platform, and the but it got renamed to Alpha Anywhere. So if you ever see V12 out there, don't get confused. I can't wait till it's V12, V12, you know, just crazy kind of naming there. It's like, but you'll see that, you know, if you see V12, that really means Alpha Anywhere. That was when the rebranding occurred. But we're now on the 4th release of the Alpha Anywhere platform, and each one has just an amazing amount of content that goes through it. And what they're starting to do now is that since there's so much that's coming out with this, some of the thinking around there is instead of just this huge monster dump of like tons of new capability, which I love, they're now going to break it up a little bit more. And mainly reason why is to make it a little more digestible for our developers. Because when you have so many new stuff, it's just a little, you know, a little hard to incorporate it, bring it in. So we're going to start breaking it. So as part of that, we now have the V4.1 release that was just done this week. And what we're doing is adding new capabilities on and making sure that you have all the pieces to it. So the key 3 things that were added to it are SVG fonts, and we're going to talk a lot more about SVG, which is just going to be extremely important for the look and feel of your application, the mobile optimized forms, how those are done, and the new ink control. It's really the underlying technology. So we're going to dive into that in a little more detail, because even though it's just a font, it's actually an indicator of some really important things for you guys to have in hand and to understand about that technology. It really unlocks just phenomenal things, and you're seeing the industry more and more embrace that capability. The other area is the push notifications. We talked about that last week a bit. The push whoosh integration, which will make your life much, much easier. So if you haven't a chance to go out and check out Push Whoosh Do, we're going to make it super simple for you to add native push notifications into your PhoneGap apps, which are really critical. Especially for field service apps. You want to be able to have the ability to ping people out in the field and have vice versa them be able to ping you, so that, let's say there's a technician that's heading to a appointment and they realize that ruh-roh, you know, that appointment got moved, changed, or whatever. You know, you could call them, you could send them a text, which may work, but more importantly is if you have an app that they have, you could add push notifications and they would get a notification right on the phone. And so it creates a much more streamlined way to communicate, and we have it already in production. Push Whoosh is a third party. There's also there's a couple different services. That's the one we found, which was really easy to set up, very powerful, very well developed, and easy to use. But we have existing accounts out there that are using push notifications to send work orders, to notify technicians in the field of work orders, to then respond to that and other pieces there. Very powerful stuff. So that's part of the V4.0, and we'll dive into a little bit more detail next week. And last but not least is SparkPost. And I'm really going to go over that in a lot more detail. But, you know, previously you really had two kind of methods you could include email in your system. One was using SMTP servers, POP servers. Alpha had that all kind of baked in there. But then Alpha added in the Mandrill capability. And Mandrill was actually owned by MailChimp. But they've made some policy changes recently where Mandrill now is part of MailChimp. It's really not a standalone service, and you have to have connected. And so there's more limitations and cost issues, things like that. So there's a third-party company called SparkPost, which also has think of it as a SMTP as a service. They're a mail delivery service. And what's really cool about SparkPost is that they have extremely aggressive pricing, meaning they have a huge free tier, which is awesome, and very, very well-built technology with a very strong back end. And in the V4.1 release, Alpha has added native capability for you to use SparkPost. So as easy as it was to use Mandrill, we can now use SparkPost, and we'll talk about that in more detail. So that's in the V4, that's out and available if you want to check it out. Also important is that there's some information on the release notes on that, but then next week we're going to dive into each one of these in a little more detail and really flesh them out for you and make sure that you understand what would be good for you. So that is Alpha Anywhere V4.1. Very, very exciting stuff. So today what I'd like to do is, and I'll start this out, let me scroll down here to my slides here, is all the way to here. Okay, mobile optimized forms. As I mentioned before, one of the key hallmark capabilities in version 4.0 of the tool was mobile optimized forms, and subsequent releases are going to continue to enhance, improve, and identify, or and make it a lot easier to develop these. It makes for incredibly powerful user interfaces for your mobile devices, whether they're tablets or phones, and encompasses a whole lot of really new, cool things that really will allow you to create data-driven kind of sites and data-driven experiences. So what I wanted to do was spend a little time here, maybe about 10, 15 minutes, and just kind of give you a little bit of the background of, what is mobile optimized forms, what's it for, why did Alpha go down this road, and why did the brainiacs of Dan Bricklin and Selwyn invest so much effort in this. And it really is going to be an incredible sort of differentiator, but more importantly, a credible differentiation tool for you as a developer having mastered this. And that's why we decided to pick this as our training for September. And I know that's a little ways away, and there's obviously training now, but we really wanted people to incorporate and understand this because it's the foundation for all of the work we go forward, is this new method to create user interfaces with it. So the key thing to understand is that there are over 2 billion clipboard workers in the world, and that's probably a underestimate. It's just there are so many people that still run their businesses off clipboards, whether they're survey people at factories, etc. It's cheap and expensive, but very limited. I mean, it solves the initial need, but in our connected world, it's a very limited way to go. So if you think about it, there are 2 billion opportunities to build apps and deploy them using mobile optimized forms. And we're going to give you all the tools to do that. And what's great is the mobile phone users, and this data information is somewhat dated. I mean, we're talking about 2013 here. Again, the adoption for mobile platforms and the lower cost. I mean, look at Apple. They brought out the iPhone SE, which basically is a 6S stuffed into a smaller body at a lot less cost, and they're getting, I mean, enormous. They just upped their orders on that, even though we could go into what's going on with Apple right now, but there's just such a demand for high-quality mobile devices out there. And one of the reasons is they're so powerful from a business tool, and we want to help you as developers unlock that. So what are the challenges for developing applications for mobile solutions, whether tablet or that? First is that you have non-optimized forms, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Second is there's a requirement for disconnected uses, especially when you go into industrial environments, factories, boilers, elevators, out in telecom. You're not always guaranteed that you have a connection. And then the other is just how fast and easy can it be to develop these pieces. So the challenges are out there, and Alpha really developed mobile optimized forms to help you address these. So let's walk through each of these real quick. First is non-optimized form. As you can see, the first generation, where a lot of people are, is they took their desktop web forms, which were originally desktop forms on, like on a desktop application, exe or a Mac executable, and they basically have just migrated on. So the idea behind it is that you have basically a old methodology and metaphor for collecting information that's been slammed onto these mobile devices, and these mobile devices are phenomenally powerful, so it's really underusing that. But more importantly, it's just a criminal use of the screen real estate, because you have a lot less screen real estate on a iPhone or an Android device than you do a 27-inch monitored desktop interface. So when you try to sort of shoehorn an older technology structure into new, it really doesn't work very well. And so you see these kind of weird things where you have lots of pop-ups, and they've gone to like make drop downs that are like have the spin list. So these are all kind of ways to be able to do it, but not very pretty and kind of ugly, and a little kludgy kind of scenario. So the problem you have is developing these is very, very challenging in terms of situation. You also have the keyboard problem, is that when you go to enter in a value at a item, the keyboard pops up to help you enter that data, but it obscures the rest of your form. So now you have a situation where you have to kind of pop back and forth, and I'm sure you've had this experience where you've gone in and it's been very, very difficult to actually fill out a form on a mobile phone because it assumes everything is in view and you're using a regular keyboard. And the phone's doing the best thing it can to help you out, but it's really a non-optimized experience. It's frustrating. It takes far longer than it should. It's not optimized. And you know, if you were a person out in the field having to do this every single day, you'd probably go out and find the developer who put this together and have words with them, or even something worse. So the idea of shoehorning this old technology into it is currently how most people have done it, and it's really not working out well. Now, what's great is there's some amazing innovation in user interfaces, swipe gestures and things like that you're seeing with a lot of the apps out there. But how do you tap into that and bring that to you as a developer, you know, without having to go to native code? And that's one of the key things we address. Second is, so what if we could create natural and fluid forms, meaning something that's very intuitive to use? What if it's easily developed? And very important, create an experience that enables the user, not hinders the user. And that's that keyboard experience, is that it gets in the way of what they're trying to do instead of helping them there, and which can lead to frustration and there. So, you know, why not move towards, and I know this picture isn't very good, to these very nice looking interfaces where you can use alternative entry methods instead of a keyboard to put them into the system. And so, you know, with the mobile optimized form that Alpha has created, it unlocks this enormous amount of creativity that you can apply to the problem. So you can create forms that are very easy to use, they look great, they operate great, they're fluid and easy, but also more importantly is can be customized to a specific business, which is very, very cool. So, you know, like the idea of, you know, are you checking in? You can just click on these buttons instead of having, this could, you know, this is what we're going to be building, instead of having a drop down with a spin list, which is just ugly as a sin and really not easy. And you're going to be able to handle all these new capabilities. For instance, with the ink control, you could literally have your, you know, intuitive interfaces where they're literally using their finger to enter data onto a form instead of having to type it, etc. And you can have all these kind of experiences, and that's what I'm talking about here, is that you could display a map and then circle on there as a data input method instead of having to type in an address or diagram something or something along those lines. And the end result is that you're going to be able to give people who have these devices very intuitive, powerful ways. Now, I don't know why they're showing a keyboard and the ink control at the same time. Not really what I'm talking here. I'm going to have to change that slide. But that's the idea, is that out there in the field, instead of fighting the form, now you can have a very natural experience. And actually, with the release by Dan Bricklin of the Alpha memo app, you can kind of get an experience how you can create a very neat interface, very simple to use, very intuitive, on the phone. And what's great is, even though that's in the App Store as an app, you can include this in your own technology very, very readily. So this is the reason we're doing mobile optimized forms, to take it from the current world, which is kludgy, clunky, and not optimized, to a world where you're going to have incredible amount of creativity to create natural and great influences there. So the second one is disconnected, you know, operation. People who are out in the field, who are using these technologies, and they're showing these people who are in the, you know, so if you look at, you see all these ads, they're really nice, these very professional people sitting in nice offices or Starbucks, kind of hipster doofuses out there, and I don't mean to be insulting this guy, but I'm in Austin, so we tend to see a lot of that. You know, where you have these wonderful high bandwidth connectivity solutions, free Wi-Fi, and, you know, Google Fiber and things like that. Well, that's nice, but, you know, what is the reality? This is the reality of the world. Out in the middle of nowhere, with potentially no connectivity to anything, you could actually be even out repairing a tower that is supposed to have internet connection, you know, maybe having LTE or something. So we have to be built for not what we think the world is, but what the world really is and as is. So you have these situations where you may be out in the middle of nowhere. And I had this recent experience. I was driving from Austin to New Mexico, and with a family trip, and I swear to you, there, you know, I'm so used to having always on internet and always on my phone. There were literally places between here and there in Texas on major highways with zero cell reception, meaning no service at all, not even a data connection. You couldn't even dial out, you know, it was that kind of level of it. And so the reality is, you're out in the field repairing these things, you can't guarantee that the person's going to have data, have connection, you know, data, or even basic connection into it. So we have to build for the reality. And that's what Alpha is building, is that disconnected capability. We've already covered a lot about that, but what's great about it is that Alpha in the version 4.0 release continues to enhance that, to improve it, meaning being able to use data caches to bring down large amounts of data so that you can be out in the field all day and have access to all your data. All these simple ways for you to really facilitate that disconnected operation and make your mobile applications that much more powerful. Now, the last part I want to talk about, and probably the most important, is speed and ease of development. Is that currently if you go and create kind of native experiences, they can be very time-consuming, whereas Alpha is focused on there. We use the low-code technique, so you're going to see, and as you go through the training, that the system generates a lot of the underlying logic for you to manage disconnected data, but more importantly to create these mobile optimized forms and to handle navigation and other pieces. And this is really the version 1.0 of mobile optimized forms. The team is busy in the background making this even easier to develop in there. The other, which is really neat, is that because of a lot of the changes that were done under the covers, it's much easier now to incorporate third-party designers. So for instance, if you have a very talented CSS person who can create beautiful screens, it's going to be much easier for you now to take that content and include it into your application. Whereas before there was somewhat, it's a little harder to apply that. So the development team has been working really hard to say, listen, the most optimized way is you have these talented designers that can create these amazing user interfaces but have no way of turning them into reality. And vice versa, and I'm more speaking for myself, you have people who know how to use Alpha and know the plumbing and pieces but don't know how to create these interfaces. What if we could make it easy for them to take these brilliant designers and these brilliant Alpha developers and make it easy for that workflow of bringing these design concepts into the application? And we're starting to see that, and it's really exciting because it's like, the old ad, you've got chocolate in my peanut butter, or you got peanut butter in my chocolate. It's exactly that. You have these two different skill sets. They're usually two different individuals that have different capabilities, different backgrounds, and we're now going to be, with this technology, be able to bring those two together and create just a phenomenal, I call it a workflow or work process, where you can take these genius designs and quickly insert them and implement them within Alpha and have just incredible flexibility to create amazing interfaces for your business users, your users, and your clients and customers. The other is the PhoneGap build system with the new methodologies that Bob Moore's been working on, the PhoneGap shell, and the others. It's going to be that much easier for you to take your concept that you've put in place on the development machine and put it into a form that can be deployed out on the, on a mobile device very, very quickly. And also the other area we're talking about is Launchpad, which is the sort of, think of it as the shell. And I don't know if we've spent much time on that, but we'll talk about it. But the team's very, future development that's coming out will make it even easier for you to take an app that you developed on here and have it running on a mobile device with very little effort and very little drama. That's all about workflow, from concept to design to implementation to deployment. At every step, the team is focused about how do we streamline that. So we say mobile optimized form, but we're really talking about mobile optimized development. What are the steps that need to happen, and what can we facilitate at every step, from taking it from a designer into the tool, from implementing it in the tool and creating all these powerful capabilities, to then making it super easy for you to then deploy that app out into the hands of your users. And the team is working very, very hard on that, and it's coming together very nicely, and you're seeing the pieces continually enhance and beyond that. So those are the challenges: non-optimized forms, disconnected usage, speed and ease of development. Our training and our help and the webinars as we go through will really be focused on helping you incorporate and internalize what the development team has put together. And we're just excited as all get out to work with you guys and gals and really help us build those pieces out there. And so we're talking about the next generation capability. It's here now. It's going to improve and get better over time. It's going to get simpler and simpler and simpler. And we want to help you really bring this into your development capability. And with that, Dave, that's what I have. So we have 4.1, 3 amazing new capabilities. more features coming down the road, and this is just a quick introduction to Mobile Optimized Form, what the problem was, and what we're doing to try and help you as developers surmount those challenges and really create something that's just amazing for yourself and for your customers.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dan. We don't have many questions. We have a lot of people in attendance, but not a lot of questions. So now would be an excellent time for you guys to start typing in your questions.
Do we need to reinstitute the beatings and the whippings that we've been, to get people to ask questions?
It may come to that.
Yeah. Don't make me go there. Don't make me do it, mister.
Well, while people are typing their questions, let's see if we can get to this access question. We may or may not have the answer to it, but let's give it a shot.
I've got a couple other questions that came in I can elucidate on.
Yeah, that'd be great too. Yep.
Cool.
Anyway, so this person has got 2 Windows 10 tablets, and they're connected via an Alpha web server to an Access database. And so the users use barcoded documents to clock in and record their labor jobs. But each time a user scans and processes an item, the Alpha server connects to the Access database. What they want to know is it possible to keep the Alpha server sort of permanently connected to the Access database so it doesn't have to connect each time and lock the Access database file?
Oh, very interesting question. That's a great question.
It's got a lot of parts to it. I think we're going to probably have to get some follow-up information, which we could probably do offline.
I think
it's
so.
An architecture issue. Yep.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that I would move to MySQL or SQL Server. I mean, just first blush and no insult is that, and I'm sure what the issue is that there's probably a whole application on top of that Access that already exists.
Yep.
So you don't really want to move that. But that's one of the challenges. That whole file locking, all the file-oriented stuff goes away when you're on MySQL or the other pieces there. The other option too is that you may want to break your Access table into a couple parts. Actually have 2 different databases and then create an app that kind of works together with them. Then when you're locking it on one, you're not inhibiting the use in other elements. But I'd have to know a little bit more about the architecture and the background and the other pieces there. But I think, interesting enough, I think there's not much way around keeping that open, so the lock issue, but we can do a little more research on that. If you don't mind, the individual who asked that, if you don't mind, we'd love to get a little bit more data and background so we can really give you a great answer, and we'll obviously share it with everybody involved with them. But that's kind of, again, why SQL databases are really, really handy, because they get rid of a lot of those they're more geared towards multi-user, multi-tenant environments to do those pieces there.
Excellent. Yeah. So go ahead and send, if you could send that question into guides@alphasoftware.com, we'll take a look at it.
Yes, absolutely.
Next question.
We're not blowing you off.
No, we're not. We will get to it, promise.
We care.
So the next question is, someone has version 12, which is really Alpha 5 version 12, which we call Alpha Anywhere now.
Yeah.
So what do they need to do if they have version 12 to get version 4.1? How do you update?
How do you update? Well, the first and easiest way is if you go to Help, check for new version. That's going to automatically ping and let you know, and if there is a new version, it'll give you the web link to go in and download it. And so you go to the downloader, and then you download it to it's an exe. They're patch files, so they're smaller than the full install, and you basically bring down the exe, run that exe. You'll need to reboot your machine, and then you'll be up to date with the latest and greatest. If you're interested in just playing with it, the technique I use is I have different virtual machines I'm running using Parallels on my Mac. So I actually spin up a virtual machine, and I have the most current release. So for instance, this actually is an older release. If I look at here, this is 12.3 3243, and that's an easy way for you to find out which build number you're on there. So this, and the reason why is I have some existing clients. I don't want to modify that at this point. But I have a whole other virtual machine that has version 4.0, which I'll be showing you next week, which has the latest and greatest. And therefore I can download, update, and I don't have to worry about messing with my current environment, we'll call it my production environment. So if you want to just play with it, I highly recommend, setting up another virtual machine. There are a lot of tools. They're easier to do these days, much easier. But the best way to get that download is just go to Help inside the Alpha Anywhere development environment, check for new version, and it'll take you to the web address that has the latest and greatest. And then on that web address, and might as well go and show you here, actually let me go ahead and show you here. Where'd it go? Check for new version. Give it a moment, it'll call there. Yep, so I'm a little out of date, 3243, they're up to 3583, so hundreds of things behind. But then you can click here to download patches. It will automatically open up the, and then here you see the different ones. So you have the Alpha Anywhere update. This is for the development system. This is for the runtime, which we talked about. Then you have your server update, application server, and then you also have your application server for IIS. So you click the ones you want. Very, very important though, super duper important, is that if you update your development system and you plan on publishing while you're using it, you need to keep these in sync. So you want to update both your development system and your application server at the same time, because obviously if there's new features, the application server may not understand those if you're using an older one, and you can get some weird things happening if you're out of sync. So that's always kind of also a situation where, like, wow, if I have a production system, you know, and I'm going to start deploying with a new version, you just have to do a little planning just to make sure you don't disrupt things. And I have one of my clients going through that right now where we have a test server. I've updated it to the most recent version of the Alpha Anywhere v4, not 4.1, but v4, and we're running a series of regression tests on that to make sure everything's comfortable before he moves it into his production environment. And then, so what I did is I installed it on a server, a test server with a v4. I installed it in a virtual machine on v4. Then I published everything up, so I went through a whole process there, and now we're testing it on that test server, or I like to call validation server. And once it goes through and passes all the tests and we're comfortable, then we'll back up his current server and go ahead and install the new one and go from there. And therefore, there's very low chance that you'll have a problem at that point because you've gone through these kind of series of steps. If you haven't really deployed stuff yet, then you just download the development system and keep working on it. If you're not using the application server, again, you can just download the development system and everything will work fine. You can put it on your machine. So that's the best way to go ahead and download and update your system. It's built into the Alpha Help menu, and there is, and one other thing, this is the current production version. We also have pre-release ones that you're welcome to download and install, but they're not to be used for production. So we give a big, hey, on you kind of thing, but that will have some of the newer kind of features. But again, what I'm seeing is that I like the new smaller releases because they're production releases, meaning that they've incorporated any fixes, changes that have happened since the last production release. You don't have to wait 6 months to a year. So I think we're going to see a better kind of support environment as we move forward with these smaller kind of point releases as they go through it.
And I think that's a good point, actually. This 4.1 is an official production release, so it is not a beta.
That is correct.
Which leads us to another question someone asked, which is, when is Tablet Optimized Forms going to be out of beta? And because they probably heard about it being in beta, but it really is those features that are what make up Tablet Optimized Forms, which are basically the form view control, the view box, and things like that. Things that Deanna is going to get to next week, I think.
Well, we'll talk. Well, actually, that's with the training.
That's the training. Well,
yeah, we're going to start
training. We're absolutely going to get there. Those are released as of version 4.0, so they're in there today. So there's it's ready. It's production ready. You can start building apps against it right away.
Yeah, so, and we will be covering those in future webinars. We just have to get off our tails.
Exactly. So someone asked about the Launchpad, which, by the way, Launchpad App Shell, which is probably not what it's going to be called. That's sort of our intro.
No, that was just kind of a conceptual.
It's if you want to, I know we will get into it next week, but if you want to give a 30-second overview, or if you'd like me to give a 30-second overview.
Yeah, I can give you real quick. Is that actually in the current release is something called the PhoneGap Shell. So normally, when you're developing, previously before this capability was here, you would go ahead and build your app, your UX, etc., and then you would sit there and go, okay, PhoneGap, put in all your stuff, upload and build. So again, click, click, click. Once you have the profile, you just click away. You would wait for it to build, and then it would give you a QR code, and you'd zap that QR code, and it would download it on the machine. Well, when you're going through multiple iterations, that can kind of get a little boring and old, having to go through that whole scenario. So from a development standpoint, we now have what's called the shell, which what you can do is you build it once, and then when you're tethered to your local machine, you can actually refresh the content within that shell with what's on your development machine. So you get rid of the build process, or you mitigate that during this. Now, you're still going to have to do that when you actually go and build it for real, but it really saves. And what we should do is a little demonstration of that on one of the future ones, because for anybody who's doing PhoneGap work, that is just a huge productivity improver. Instead of going through the whole build process, now you can be testing it on your mobile device using the shell, and it really facilitates that. And Bob Moore, who is really developing and leading the development of our mobile PhoneGap solutions, he built it for himself, I think, more than anything else, because he was doing a lot of PhoneGap work, a lot of builds, and I think he finally got tired and says, there's got to be a better way, or said, there's got to be a better way. And so he built that, and he's put it into the system there. He's the same individual who did the notification pieces. So we'll test that. I think that's a great one, especially for people who are doing PhoneGap or moving towards doing the PhoneGap build process. They really should have a handle on that. So we'll schedule up a little demo in one of our very near future webinars so you can see it in operation and see how powerful. We'll show you the build process, and then we'll show you how to use it with the shell. And again, this is a development tool versus a production tool at this point in time. So it really facilitates speed of development.
Exactly, and if I could just add to that, the Launchpad will actually take it a step further, where you'll be able to get, in theory, the Launchpad, say, from the Apple Store, and point it to a server and have it load your app into it, so that you essentially can bypass having to use the Apple Store as the means of distributing your corporate apps. So another part of the app shell is that it gets around the needing to have private app stores. It'll sort of be our version of the private app store, but that's on the way. There are other ways to distribute as well.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, and just to let everybody know, there's a huge amount of complexity because there's a huge amount of rules for stuff that's in the App Store in terms of what the apps can do. So a lot of that is navigating what can really be done through that methodology, but it's very exciting because that would reduce deployment times enormously also. And so again, all about optimizing that process from design to out in the hands of your customers, every point of the way, things like the app shell, the shell now to help speed development of PhoneGap. Now that would be the next iteration, but that's what the team is trying to make that so streamlined that you can go from concept to produced in the hands of people application in the shortest possible way. Very exciting stuff.
We're getting a bunch of positive comments coming in for showing off the PhoneGap shell. I guess enough people have had the issue.
I'm probably going to bring Chris in on that because Chris is...
yeah, Chris has done that. I've done that as well, actually. The shell is really super useful because unlike when you make a small tweak, then you submit it, then you wait for it to build, then you load it, then it works. It takes forever. It's several minutes in between iterations. This can be done in 3 seconds between iterations, and it's available today. The quick place to look, though, if you're interested in the PhoneGap shell, just do a quick Google search. Or if you build a new UX component, the PhoneGap shell is one of the templates there. So it's there isn't a lot to it.
Yeah, but let's plan on doing that on one very close because I do think it's one of those little features that was extremely powerful but kind of glossed over. And again, that's also, team, why they're moving to point releases like this is that there was so much in 4.0 that a lot of it just, it's awesome, but it's kind of hidden. So that's one of the key things that Dave and I are working on is as these things come out, we want to make sure you understand all these so that you can immediately start applying them to your development process.
Another question we have coming in is, in the new version, are the browser renderings still simulated, or can we see how things appear in the actual browser? And I believe what they're talking about are the devices. Like, for example, if you choose an iPhone 6, what we give you is a picture of an iPhone 6 and the amount of space an iPhone 6 would take up, but it isn't actually running the iOS Safari browser on the inside of your PC, nor is it for, if you had a Sony Ericsson or any of the other ones. There are test clouds available, including one from Amazon, and Chris Martin, our other solutions engineer, is taking a look at doing deployments to that. So if you really want to see what your app is going to look like using the actual code that runs on these devices, Now, most of the time, this isn't the case, and there shouldn't be variants. And if there are, we'll fix them. But if you really need to see that, there are, in fact, services that are available for that. They're not free. I don't know how expensive they are. We're researching that as well, but that'll be coming up in a future topic.
Yeah. So just so everybody's comfortable and understand is that this is just to give you an idea of what the look will. It's running in this case. I'm using Chrome. So so this is just kind of a fancy border to kind of give you a feel dimensionally what it would look like, whether it's on there or iPhone 6 or an iPad or something like that. But we're not actually running an iPad mobile browser to see what's going on there, and that's again, part of what I know Chris is looking into with Dave.
We have a question here, and I'd like to find out a little bit more about the question, but it asks, is there an easy way for a PhoneGap app to get the IP address? It seems like there's some messy ways, but is there anything alpha-sized for getting an IP address? I guess my two questions would be, are you trying to get the IP address of what the device is currently running, would be my question, or what IP address are you trying to grab? If you can let us know the answer to that, we can give you an answer.
Yeah.
Here's sort of a question, sort of a business question, and that is, any metrics sort of on how you bid an optimized form app out to a client? So, a client comes in and said, look, I've got this multi-page app. This is sort of a off-the-wall question since you don't have any preparation to answer it, but how do you go about doing that sort of thing when it comes to bidding?
Interesting. Yeah. No, that's always challenging, and I think the key challenge, if I can just kind of go over it a little bit, is that first, if you're doing a mobile optimized app, you kind of have to know the new technology. So whenever you're bidding out a project, it's sort of like, have I done this before, and am I iterating on existing known knowledge? Because you have always a learning curve, which we want to try and facilitate for you, to go through before you can actually become efficient at any new technology, because there's a whole new methodology around mobile optimized forms that Alpha has developed that is very, very powerful, but it's got new controls, new thinking, new methodology, a lot of knowledge. So if you're going to go out and bid a project that's going to be mobile optimized, make sure first and foremost you build in the training time and sort of the moving up the learning curve that you're going to face, because again, they're different. And you can obviously do your own initial development internally and do your own training, but man, until you're doing an actual project with a final delivery date, the rubber doesn't meet the road, and you're not going to find all the different things just through experimenting. So make sure if you're going to bid out that kind of project that you incorporate your learning curve stuff, because I've seen people who say, oh, it looks really easy, and it is really easy, but there's always the learning curve that's associated with anything. It doesn't matter what technology that's out there. What's nice is that the team has already done a lot of work to make it simpler for you to create, there's genies in there and other pieces there, but you have to incorporate that there. Now, the next thing is, I find that's important for bidding out a job like that is often that user interface. So there's two elements. There's the functionality that is produced by the device, or actually, I'm sorry, the application, but then there's the look and feel of what it should be in terms of the user interface. And so if you have not gone through this process before, we've talked about it before, but the wireframing is super critical in terms of creating wireframes. And what you're going to see as we continue to unwrap and as we continue to work on this is that more and more, we talked about wireframes as these kind of simplistic, it really isn't what it looks like. It's more of just here's page 1, page 2, here's how things are laid out. What's great about the new mobile optimized form is that you can use much more modern prototyping tools. Things, for instance, such as Sketch. So let me go ahead and throw that up here. And I'll come back to the question there, but I want to design tool. And there's some online ones. This is one that's very, very popular. It's on the Mac, but it's called Sketch. And what it allows you to do is basically it's like Photoshop for building web apps. And so instead of building a wireframe kind of scenario, and let me show you here. Let's see, instead of building this, which is probably your first initial step, is to build something like this, kind of more of a conceptual framework of how it will be laid out. The next step is now you can take it to this level, which now looks much more like a real app. And what's great is all this content can now be exported and moved into your environment. So what you're going to find with mobile optimized forms is a bit of, a little bit more on the front end in terms of the design capability. So when you're budgeting a project like that, budget doing, a very basic wireframe to get the structure of what the functionality should be, and then allocate some for creating then these nicer designs that are done in a tool like Sketch or Photoshop. Dave has done some phenomenal work in terms of the inspection app, and he did all of that work in there. And that's more of a creative step, but you're going to be going through that. You're going to get some approvals from your client there. And then there's the actual integration of this interface content with the actual functioning pieces there. And the last thing I'm going to say about budgeting, so make sure you budget your learning curve, make sure that you're now budgeting a little bit to go through the design process, which is super critical and will pay off huge dividends. And then last but not least is that understand, is it mobile, is it a PhoneGap app? Or is it a mobile, web browser app, meaning you're not really going to wrap it in PhoneGap? If it's just mobile optimized, then you don't have some of the PhoneGap things. You have to go through the build process and then the actual, approvals and getting them in the stores and things like that. So I would say, keep it simple. First one you do is make it a very simple app, just so that you can get over the learning curve part and you can invest in understanding this design methodology. What's great is the design tools are getting better and better and better and much easier to take you from this point to actually into alpha based on the developers working there. So definitely that key thing is learning curve, little longer design cycle because of the more of the realism in the pieces you're going to put in there, and then also if PhoneGap's involved, you want to actually allocate for just the mechanics and logistics of putting together, deploying a PhoneGap application. I'm not sure if I answered a lot, but hopefully that gives you a little viewpoint into how I approach it.
You said a lot of words, so that's got to count for something there, right?
I know. Hopefully not. And the reality, though, this is the cool thing.
Yeah.
Once you've gone through that learning curve, the next project is going to go that much faster. So,
It is, and we actually have a question exactly about that. It's a follow-up to the metrics question. They said, now with version 4.1, how many man-hours would it take to recreate that inspection solutions app, assuming that they are not as smart as Dan Bricklin? And since I am not as smart as Dan Bricklin, I'll be the first to admit that, but I built that inspection solutions app, and I'll tell you that some of the stuff that I had to solve in order to build that app were things that weren't yet documented, but now they are because I built the app, and that was part of the exercise. So if I had to go back and rebuild an app like that, and I'm not really a super developer designer, I do a lot of stuff here, but that's not my full-time thing, I would be able to put that together in 20 hours maybe, including sourcing the graphics and laying out the screens and all that. It really wouldn't be that bad. If I had to build that exact one again, I could probably do it in a day. But I mean, if I had to build one that was like that, I would feel comfortable and probably I would stretch it out, say it's a week, and then build in padding and all the other things that you need to do when you actually bid on a real job. But that's it. It would not be a multi-week hardcore programming project, provided you knew the sort of the background of how the components work and had examples on hand that you could just steal from. So I'll tell you that in that the point of that app was to do as little custom JavaScript programming as possible. I really wanted to build something that people could take a look at, and when they look at the 2 or 3 lines of JavaScript, I think the one with the most amount of JavaScript is like 10 or 12 lines. I think Dean has seen it. You won't get that confused. You'll say, oh, I get what they're doing there, and I commented it throughout. So it's not some of the other apps that we have built, the cement truck example, if you guys have seen that from Dan Bricklin, it's really good, but it has a ton of custom stuff in it, and it's not quite as easy to figure out. So I think this one will be a bit easier. By the way, you guys should have...
start with that.
Yep.
Start with that, and just to let you know, is that's a living project, meaning that Dave and the team are going to be continuing to enhance that, incorporate more mobile optimized pieces, and deliver that kind of content and knowledge to our developers there. The only other thing is that realize that 20 hours is for a prototype that's not probably production worthy, meaning it could be used, but it doesn't have all the back office and the connections and the other data modeling and other stuff that you would do with say you know, kind of a start from scratch project. And then on the backside, there's testing, deployment, user acceptance. So
that's exactly right. So no, just talking about.
So I just like to throw that in and say,
if you were trying to build, so if you want to download the, there's always that. There's bulletproof testing, and then there's the things you didn't think of.
So don't go bid 20-hour projects.
Do not go bid 20-hour projects. I'm just saying, just for yourself, that keep in mind you would probably be able to do it in about that.
Yes, absolutely.
Here, someone is asking us because of issues that they have had publishing, but is there?
Oh, good. I thought they were talking about issues. We can't handle personal issues.
No, well, that's
alpha technical issues.
That's a different one. That's our late night show. Exactly.
We could be here a long time if we want to do that.
Is there a service that could help publish mobile apps to the Apple Play, to Apple and to the Play stores, and the other mobile app services? We could help you with that right away. Our professional services group is competent. We do have people on staff who have expertise in that area. So if you're interested, just send an email either over to sales@alphasoftware.com or to guides@alphasoftware.com, and it'll get you set up with the right people if you don't want to bother with that stuff, because it's a fair amount of paperwork and filling out forms and things like that. But that's that. We do have some videos though that do cover that, which I can find you again. A video to email to guides@alphasoftware.com. I can show you some of Chris Martin's videos in which he walks you through how you set up the accounts on iOS and at Google Play.
And there is a 93-page document on using PhoneGap that it was November, but Bob put this together, and it talks a lot about, how to, some of the logistics that are involved with it. And you can download that from within the system. Actually, if you go, bear with me here. If I go to here, go to the PhoneGap, and then right here, Open Alpha, there's a lot of really good content on there of, those mechanics and other pieces that are needed for the whole out there. So definitely take a chance to download that and review it. It'll give you a lot of good background information in terms of moving down that road.
Excellent. We have a question about last week, possibly the week before's webinar, the one on sharding, and someone had mentioned that they were looking for the sample files. So I've posted the sample files. I actually did put the link in with the video. So if you found it in the video library, you probably see the link there. But if not, just grab it out of the chat window, and you'll be able to get your sample files there.
Yeah, Dave. Why aren't those out there?
They're up there. It's up there. It's the description.
You're hanging on this one.
Thanks, man.
I place this at your feet.
Here's a great question. Do the tablet optimized forms need the Pro version to run, or can you do it with the rookie version? So in other words, do you need the of the two SKUs that we have in the store right now? You do well. There's three if you count the enterprise SKU, but it is the second SKU allegedly. But I'll let you in on a little secret. So licensing-wise, yes, you do need to have the other license, but the software doesn't actually stop you from messing around with those features. So if you do end up deploying an app, do get the version you're supposed to have, but the version before, the tier down it has all of the same VBox control form control stuff in it at this moment. So go ahead and play with it. Let's see what else we've got here. Oh, someone was asking about inspection solutions. What application are we referring to by inspection solutions?
Good point.
Let me point up a link. You're going to get an email on this, I think, later today from our marketing department, letting you know that it's available to download. But let me see if I can just quickly find that for you. Oops. We'll wait for the email. I don't see it right here. I'm sorry. There'll also be a blog article that should be posted later today, and that will have the link to it as well. But there's a video. Actually, I should be able to find the video. Hang on a second. I'm going to go paste that in.
Oh, yeah, that video is nice. It gives a good background on it.
The video will explain it. And the video actually has a link to where you can download it as well. So let me just log into my account.
And it's got that really cool Wayne's World feel to it.
Wayne's
Sorry, it was the first iteration.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, now that one's laid at my feet.
All right, hang on. Copy link. Here we go. So I am pasting this into the chat window. And so that's the link to the video. In the description of the video, there's a link to the GitHub repository where you can get the inspection solutions application. So this application lets you basically take inspect different types of construction equipment. It works by scanning a barcode, and we include the barcodes for you, which loads information from a data cache into the app. You then have pass-fail buttons. You have the ability to take a picture and to annotate that picture. You have notes fields. You have a meter control field. You have a numeric control field where you can punch in different numbers. There's a signature capture and all that, and it all works offline. So you'll see that in the video. You'll also see that in the email, which you'll get later today. So let me take a look through, see what questions we have in the last few minutes here. There's a AWS EC2 instance, wondering what the minimum AWS EC2 instance is for running the Alpha server for a light load or as a development server. I don't have the specs for that, but I know someone here who does. If you don't mind resending that to guides@alphasoftware.com, I can get you the information on that. Let's see what else I've got here. I think that might be it, unless someone wants to toss in a question right now. So maybe we get to go home early.
No,
usually doesn't work that way, does it? Doesn't work like that, does it? Okay, here's a good question. I don't know if I know the answer, but I'll ask it. Is it possible to have a project where external users on the web can sign in with a username and password authentication, and users within the firewall on the domain login can use Active Directory authentication? Fairly certain the answer is yes to that one. Do you want me to reread that one, Dan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that is possible. I mean, Active Directory is built into the technology, so.
So yes, absolutely, and it could determine whether or not you're on the same domain and use that as the authentication, whereas external people would have to use a username and password. That is.
And I found out something cool about that too. Is that with the IIS plugin, you can use Windows authentication, so they don't even have to log in. It'll recognize who they are and be able to let them right into the app. So
right. So as long as they're logged in.
Very cool. You have to use the IIS plugin, but there's some neat things in Microsoft environments you can do.
Right. So, right. IIS plugin is required for that one. I think that might be it. Let me look. Hey, I think we're off the hook. 2 minutes early. Well, we can get back to work. If you do have any questions that you think of that were questions that we didn't get to and I skipped over, please send them to guides, G-U-I-D-E-S, at alphasoftware.com. Today's session was recorded. It should be posted in about 2 days to videos.alphasoftware.com. So, Deanne, I want to thank you very much for presenting today. I want to thank everyone who attended and for people who asked questions. Hope to see you soon at another webinar, and hope to see you especially next week when we go over the mobile optimized forms at the end. Thanks again. Take care and have a great week. Bye-bye.